Welcome to my sewing room. We have a most exciting show for you today. The theme of the show is actually using how to use triple needles, wing needles, how to make machine scallops, and corded scallops. Before we begin of all the magic we're going to do today, I would like to share with you some gorgeous clothes. You know, heirloom sewing isn't just little girls' clothes. It is very involved in many other types of clothing also. This absolutely wonderful jacket, all made and created by machine, is a complete masterpiece of leaves and vines and absolutely wonderful little flowers. And look at this magnificent burgundy or purple lining that really sets it all off. Absolute elegance is what I would call this lady's vest. It has not only wonderful creative work on the outside of the jacket, which is a lightweight linen, it has incredible work on the lining of the jacket, which is also linen. All of these built-in embroidery stitches. I love the way that lace and beading have been incorporated into the beautiful, beautiful machine stitches. Heirloom sewing doesn't have to be white. Heirloom sewing can be a wonderful black or burgundy or any color you want to be vest. And you know we've been using vests on this series, so these are some wonderful examples. Beautiful machine embellishment, machine silk ribbon embroidery, beautiful built-in stitches, and the back is just as exciting as the front as far as all the beautiful work on this good-looking black vest. The last jacket vest to share with you has raised applique, absolutely elegant beige applique on the white stippled jacket. It looks like it's almost quilted. Beautiful gold threads as well as traditional ecru threads. Absolutely a masterpiece. I am so pleased to have as my guest today Philip Pepper. Philip is the creative sewing specialist for FOF American Sales, and if you'll come over to the demonstration boards with me, I'm going to show you a little bit of the magic of Philip Pepper. There's a store in London that sells such things as $1,000 pillowcases, $1,500 for one sheet. Well, that store can't hold a candle to these gorgeous things that Philip Pepper has made. This is one of the most beautiful pillowcases that I have ever seen. All of this, by the way, is done out of the embroidery that's built into the sewing machine. The raised applique out of both batiste, raised applique out of linen. This corded scallop right here, scallop or scallop, whichever one you call it, is one of the things Philip's going to share with you today, how beautiful and how easy this is. This is a table runner that is fit for the Queen of England as far as I'm concerned. Beautiful raised appliques, padded satin stitch. And you know what, over here on the edge, I love the gold, especially if you have gold china on the table, and if you're like I am, you have some china that has gold on it, and beautiful decorative stitching, including the wing needle and the scalloped edge. This lovely white tablecloth is absolutely wonderful. I love the scallop over here on this edge, absolutely beautiful. And all of that is right out of the sewing machine. The pillowcase has a real wonderful example of the triple needle work, the wing needle work in the middle, the triple needle work, and then the Madeira applique stitch. Philip is going to share with you exactly how to do all of that. And once again, look at this beautiful and very interesting scallop on the bottom. Now, so you can see how all of these wonderful stitches are done, I'm going to come over and welcome my very dear friend, Philip Pepper. Welcome to the show, Philip.
Thank you, Martha. We're going to start with the triple needle. I decided to show that because a lot of our students out there aren't aware that they can use this in their machine. So we've laid it out here, and a triple needle is just 3 needles on a common shank. And next to that I have the wing needle and, of course, then a plain needle. Just to give you an example of what it's going to look like, you can see the triple needle stitching here. And I'm going to sew a couple of rows, and then we're going to put a hem stitch program in between that.
Oh, I think that triple needle is so pretty.
It is beautiful.
You know what it reminds me of? It just reminds me of lace.
Oh, it really will in a minute after we get a wing needle in between.
Do you ever do it like on organdy or anything where it really, or netting, where it really does look like it would be a traditional lace?
Organdy and silk, whatever fabric they want to use. So we'll turn this around, and I'm going to use the edge of the presser foot as a guide to this previous row, which will give us a real nice amount to run the hem stitch program in between. If they've never used the triple needle in their machine before, they might want to check with their dealer about correct threading, the use of twin needle key so that they don't break it.
Now, I notice you're not using a stabilizer underneath this. For triple needle, is that ever necessary to put a stabilizer?
Well, actually what I did earlier was I sprayed this fabric with a liquid stabilizer, and I ironed it dry so you can see it's fairly stiff. I'm going to go ahead and clip those because we're going to take the triple needle out, and I'm going to put a plain needle in the machine, and we're going to do a perfect scallop. It's a corded scallop.
Right.
It makes them heavier and lifts them a little from the fabric so they look nicer.
It just looks for the world to me like that beautiful padded satin stitch. When I looked at that pillowcase you have over there, I thought, oh my, it looks as if someone who really knows how to embroider has been working about a year.
Well, it makes a big difference with the cord in there. So we're going to select a basic scallop stitch program, nothing real fancy, and I'm going to pass the pearl cotton, and this is pearl cotton number 5, through the needle bar thread guide. And you'll see immediately that the needle picks up that cord, and it couches it, and that's all you have to do. And when I show you this in a moment, you're going to see how raised it is and what it also makes a big difference when you trim it. It's just more stable.
And all you did was just put it through the thread guide on the front.
That is all you have to do. And you see it flopping, and you may think that's going to come out of there, but it won't.
Oh, that is beautiful. Will it do all of those fancy scallops too, the ones that go up and down and all around just by putting it in? Okay.
No, it won't do all of them, but you know, I find this is just such a basic scallop. We use this a lot. So let me lay it here, and you see how raised that is.
That is truly beautiful. And then all you have to do is trim it away.
That's right.
That is if it's on the bottom. Of course, if it's in the middle, you don't have to trim it away.
And I normally put a fabric sealant on there before I trim it, like, you know, one of the ones that will keep it from fraying before it's trimmed, before I trim it. Now let's put the wing needle in, and I want to show you how we'll make this, change this completely. We're going to run this program in between our triple needle stitching. And I'm using the 120. I prefer, whoops, I'll wrap that around there a bit. I prefer the larger wing needle, so this is the 120 size. And I'll select the program, and I use this one a lot. It's just like a honeycomb stitch. It's real common. Okay. And we're going to sew right down the middle.
With the use of these beautiful stitches, you're creating a new piece of fabric, really.
You truly are. And actually, I have to tell you, this would be very pretty on the hem of something like, you mentioned organdy a while ago. Organdy's perfect to decorate with these techniques.
Well, I just love those vests that you had a few minutes ago, and it almost looks to me as if you had created new fabric on those vests.
There we have the hem stitch in between the triple needle. It looks almost like a piece of lace.
The hem stitch and then the lace again, it really does look almost like a piece of lace. Well, Philip has done a little more magic for you and a beautiful home decorating project. I have the most beautiful pillowcase for you. Now, the pillowcase is a purchased pillowcase with magnificent embellishment on it. Starting here in the middle is a beautiful two-tone bow, very heirloom bow. As a matter of fact, this is one of my designs. And it's stitched in the middle, absolutely elegant. Then, by the way, you do have to slice the end of this pillowcase and open it up a little bit to do this work. Look at this beautiful lace made by machine. Triple wing work, triple needlework, wing needlework, triple needle lace again, more embellishment, then stitching down the lace both with a Madeira applique type stitch, more embellishment that matches all the way over. It looks just like lace has been stitched down to me, and then a really pretty braid also. Philip, I'd like for you to share with us exactly how you stitch some of these stitches down.
Okay, I have the wing needle back in the machine, and why don't I show you how we're going to attach the lace heading. I've selected a program that's, well, it's like a pin stitch.
You know, pin stitch and Madeira applique stitch, I guess they're about the same thing, huh?
Basically, yeah. I'm also going to sew down the other side with an entredot stitch program so they can see that they have a choice as to how to do this. So we'll flip it around, and then I'll select another program that will sew right down the middle of the heading of the lace and give the entredot effect.
Are there several different entredot stitches built into the machine?
There's 5 to 10, or you could design your own for that matter if you wanted to. But we're working with one that's already built into the machine. These
there are 5 to 10 already
5
built
to 10.
in? Well, that should give me a good
That
choice,
should be plenty for most people.
And you're just going right down the lace. You didn't straight stitch at first.
The only thing I did was I stabilized the lace and the fabric so that the hem stitch hole is nice and open. So here I have the pin stitch or Madeira applique stitch that we talked about, and at the top here is the one that gives us more of the entredot effect to attach the lace with, and they could choose either one depending on how they wanted to do it.
And did you use the 120 wing needle
I prefer
also?
the 120.
Okay, do you ever use the 100?
I don't ever use the 100.
You don't ever
No,
use the 100?
just the 120.
Well, Philip, I do. Sometimes
Okay.
use the 100. You'll give me permission, won't you?
Sure, sure.
Absolutely beautiful, and you just simply put the lace down, stitched it down on both sides, and I noticed on the pillowcase you did not cut the fabric away from behind.
No, I didn't.
But on other times, do you ever cut the fabric
That's
away?
an option. They can just trim the back of the lace, or not the lace, we don't want to trim that away, or trim the linen fabric or whatever the base fabric is away from the lace. And then, of course, it just shadows through.
You got a peekaboo look.
Yep.
You know, Philip, you say, hopefully you won't trim the lace. Honestly, I was out teaching not too long ago, and one lady said, now, Martha, show me how you trim this lace. I said, oh, I'll be glad to. You just use your scissors, and you're very careful.
Right.
And I sliced a little bit, and I looked, and I had cut the lace.
Yes.
So lace can be repaired,
Yes,
too.
it can.
But so just be careful, though, on cutting that lace.
Right.
Philip, thank you so much,
Thank you.
very much for being here. And next, I have a really interesting craft for you. Somewhere in your treasures, do you have maybe some eyeglasses with an eyeglass case that belonged to somebody that you loved? Well, it will probably be thrown away if you don't get it out and do something with it. This is a beautiful little decorative piece to put anywhere in your home that celebrates being able to see, of course, with eyeglasses, and it celebrates sewing with all the wonderful sewing things in it. It has some hooks and eyes, which this is so funny. They cost 15 cents. That's been a while ago. It has some needles, a very old tape measure, some embroidery floss, and then little flowers and little tiny thimble. And over here in the corner, just a nice little piece of antique lace. Okay, if you have some eyeglasses that you might use, it's really fun to go ahead and make a piece like this. These came, by the way, Dr. William Linden from Pasadena, California. And the phone number was listed Sycamore 66554. That's been a long time ago. These little glasses are really broken. They even only have one eyepiece and it's taped together, but that just makes it a lot more interesting. So you put the little glasses, and here's a little piece of antique lace that could be glued to the back. And then, stand up there. I think I need my glue to make that man stand up. Okay. Then here are the Millward's needles, which cost 19 cents. Those are old needles. Then the little sew-on snaps could be tucked in. Those cost 20 cents. Then here is some antique embroidery floss. And then just the little flowers from your local craft store or 5 and 10 store. And then you might even put in a little crochet hook as part of your sewing memorabilia. Now then, I have a doll dress for you. This little doll's name is Martha, just like mine. She has red hair, green eyes, wears glasses, just like I do, and she has on the prettiest dress that is made totally on a sewing machine. Her little dress has a real high, really pretty yoke that has insertion stitched down with wing needle entredo. And those little peach dots, those aren't purchased from Switzerland. Those are actually stitched into fabric. Her circular skirt has the most wonderful skirt. See how pretty the stitching is? She has ovals. Now the ovals are stitched down to the fabric using a wing needle entredo. Here are those little dots that are stitched in, and another circular piece of lace and the little wing needle dots, and see that, regular needle dots and a wing needle entredo in between. Now the laces are all stitched down with a wing needle pin stitch or Madeira applique stitch, and all the way down to the bottom, and then the gathered lace is just gathered and zigzagged to the dress. Actually, I think her sleeve is just as pretty as the skirt of the dress. Sleeves do make such a difference in doll clothes. Her little sleeve has a little loop made out of lace, and that same wonderful stitching with the dots stitched down and the tiny, tiny little wing needle entredo in between. There are several really neat techniques, and really they are not easy, they are not hard, even though they look really hard. All right, step number one on getting this skirt ready. You trace off your loops and you trace off your lines to go into preparation. That is always critical. Then I'm going to shape the laces. Now this board is not really a lace shaping board, but it can act as a lace shaping board. I put the pins to curve laces. I put the pins on the outside of the curve, and I must have a board of some kind to stick the pins into. All right, I'm going to pull the lace over a little bit so I can stick the pin right into the board. I'm going to come over here, stick the pin into the board, and I go all the way around as long as I want to go. Now then, I have a little lace trouble here. Can you see this is a little loop trouble since this is a lace loop? I'm going to have to do something to make that lay down. French laces and some English laces, but all French laces have a gathering thread built into the heading of the lace. Now I have pulled one of these gathering threads. Right here is the gathering thread that I have pulled. It's pulled right out of the heading of the lace. Now watch what happens when I pull the gathering thread. That is, if I don't drop it, which I just did. Okay, now can you watch the whole circle there? It is absolutely just like magic. Do you see? I am not doing anything. I'm not coming up here and fixing it. I'm doing nothing except keeping my hand down here. Now, I've pulled all the way over to the other side, but it will make it a lot easier if I go over here and pull on this side and make the whole thing lay down. Now then, this shows it's completed after I have stitched it. Okay, I'm going to come over here and stitch a wing needle entredo for you so you can see what wing needlework looks like. Now, this is a real special wing needle entredo, because this is an entredo daisy. It is a wing needle entredo that actually makes the prettiest little daisy flower you have ever seen. Now don't forget that you can, pull out my pins, you can just zigzag these pretty laces down. You do not have to use a decorative stitch. Now I do have stabilizer underneath this sewing because it would not do very well to do wing needlework without a stabilizer. Can you see those little daisies that are coming out from behind the foot? That is a really magnificent wing needle daisy entredo, but you can just zigzag. You don't have to have the wing needle stitches. Then after you finish, here it is after you finish. Now that's not the daisies, that's the Madeira. Let me show you one more trick. The way I got these little dots inserted in behind this circle is after I zigzagged or wing needle entredo the outside of the center, I cut away the whole center of the dress. Then I slipped this piece of organdy that I had done my decorative stitching on. I slipped this in behind there and go back and do my decorative stitching in order to attach it. Now then, I would like to share with you an antique technique off of a little girl's purse. I have the sweetest little girl's purse to share with you. This little purse has gathered and circular ruffles, and even you can see the little hand stitching under there, almost crude stitching, just really big stitches. Now I believe this little purse with the circular ruffles was made for either a First Communion or maybe Easter, and I'll tell you why. You see the little ribbons that are folded, they come up this way, and there's a little piece that goes over it in the form of a cross. I think that might have had religious symbolism. And then the little girl carried her purse like this, and of course she could put inside her little purse whatever she wanted to put inside. I thought the technique was really interesting for the circular ruffles. Now here's how these ruffles were made. First of all, you cut a bias piece that's 2 inches wide, as long as you need your ruffles to be. Then this bias piece is folded in half and pressed. That's the first part of the ruffle. Then a zigzag, we did a zigzag over another thread so we would have a nice pull thread to gather this with. The next step is to pull the pull thread. Now remember, I zigzagged over this navy blue thread. Okay, I'm going to pull the pull thread and begin to distribute the gathers. And by the way, I do have to draw a circle for my base pattern. That's the outside circle. And I'll come around here and distribute the gathers a little bit, and then I will pin them. And then I'm going to just use a basic zigzag to come over, and I'll kind of just hold it up a little bit and put the gathering line down on the line that I have drawn on my little purse on the circular line. I really don't need to pin it too much because all I'll do is just hold it up a little bit, and then I'll travel on around that circle. Now when I get to the point where I just met the first sewing, I will simply move over and begin to travel in a little bit with my circular ruffles. Just move on in and go up a little bit more. I have a finished little circular puffing pillow. It is really a pillow, it's a little purse. I have one that I've just finished here, and I brought the bias ruffle all the way around, and instead of doing the little ribbon cross, I just put a little rose in the middle of it for you. I do believe it is so much fun to take beautiful little antique things. Who would ever have thought that that little tiny purse would have had so many lovely techniques of ribbon manipulation as well as bias ruffle folding, and yet it was a really little usable little purse also. That's the reason it's so much fun to look for antique items and reproduce them for you. Speaking of antique items, won't you come along with me to my attic? For those of you who love smocking, I'd like to share with you this real smock that I had the privilege of purchasing at a Christie's textile auction last December in London. Real smocks traditionally had hand embroidery on the collars and on flat spaces, such as this area right here. Let me lift up the collar and show you. By the way, this is a really heavy, like a gabardine fabric, because smocks were worn when the shepherds were out in the field or the workmen were out in the field. They were worn to keep their clothing clean and also for warmth. See this beautiful embroidery right in this area? It comes down to about the waistline. Now that is a sort of feather stitch. Now the smocking is found in several places on this wonderful smock. First of all, it is found holding the gathers in the top of the sleeve. Then as we go on down the sleeve, there is more smocking that holds in the fullness here. And then as you can see, there is more hand feather stitching that goes around the cuff. Okay, back over to the center of the smock. The smocking begins at the high yoke and comes down almost to the waistline. Now let's go on down to these pockets, which I find to be fascinating. These are real pockets like I like. It has the hand embroidery around the outside of the pocket, a hand embroidered buttonhole, because my estimation is this smock is 200 to 300 years old, and believe me, they didn't have any sewing machines then. Can you imagine stitching every one of those stitches in this heavy fabric by hand? Oh no. Then it has a great big pocket, really a deep pocket, and it has one on the other side. Now I purchased many garments that have just plain holes in them. Even at Christie's auction, this smock had a big hole in it, which I haven't fixed yet because I wanted to show it to you first. I will put netting behind that hole and just simply zigzag it because the fabric is actually ripped. I couldn't fold it over and make a nice seam, but I will be able to repair it. I thank you so much for joining me in my sewing room today, and I certainly hope you'll be with me next time.